there, everyone. We are here for a webinar that the Doral Community Coalition wanted to put on, but this time with the assistance and attendance and participation and the great wisdom of our District 12 Commissioner, Juan Carlos Bermudez. Commissioner Bermudez, thank you so very much for joining us this evening. We know how busy your schedule can get, and we really appreciate your time with us today. As you know, we invited you because we would love to get some feedback from you about the recent vote regarding Covanta at the special meeting that was had earlier this month. And it would just be really valuable, I think, for the residents to hear from you, maybe answer some questions, and really just get sort of intel from you on some issues regarding this, where it's headed, etc. And so, Commissioner, before I let you say hello to everyone, I would be remiss if I didn't remind our residents, our viewers, and really everyone in District 12 that you really have been a champion on this particular issue for us. I think that we are incredibly lucky that, in fact, you were elected. I'm sure that you remember just last year, in 2022, there were certain votes coming out of the commission from our own representatives that almost felt as if we were not being represented whatsoever. And since you took office, you really took the bull by the horns with this issue. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart as a resident. And I am confident that I'm also thanking you on behalf of all of those residents that are so impacted by this. So with that sort of off the cuff introduction, I would love for you to say hi to everyone and talk a little bit about this issue.
Well, thank you, Yvette, and thank you to the coalition for the kind words, and certainly for putting this together and for the work last year when the coalition went to court, on some of these issues as an organization to protect the interests of the residents of the city of Doral, which is not always an easy thing to do, to go into court on behalf of the community. So, but thank you to all the residents too that have participated. I know some may be on tonight, some may not, but so many of you have expressed your opinions, not only at the county commission, but also to my colleagues. It is important. While I appreciate the kind words, Yvette, and, I think that it's important that, the residents have also been active in letting my colleagues know how important this is, not only to the city of Doral, but to Miami-Dade County in general. So it's great to have the opportunity to be here, and hopefully, I'll give you an update of where we're at and give you my thoughts too, because it's important that everybody understand, and I've had residents who have asked me, I'd love to go to every community and speak. The problem is the limitation of time with the county work and other things, it's always very difficult. So I thank everybody for worrying about this, for caring about this, and for being involved. And I think that we have to remember, the three major reasons. And I know there's a slide that maybe some of you have seen, but some have not. And it's up on the screen right now, which is Resolution R24023 did three major things. And, that was the first thing I did when I got there. And it was very important that we really rescind the decision that was made in the summer of last year, if you remember, when the former commissioner, who's now the mayor of Sweetwater, Jose Pepe Diaz, not only accepted the report from the county, which was not a report that said that the Doral site should be the final site, but via a motion, it was approved by the county commission. So my first task was to come back and change that. I appreciate and thank my colleagues for the support to rescind the original resolution, and unanimously, by the way, also reopen the discussion on where this facility should go. Had that not occurred, the decision had already been made to keep it in the existing Doral site. So I'm very appreciative and thank my colleagues for that. The second thing that the resolution did was it authorized the mayor to analyze and recommend siting alternatives to a new waste energy facility to replace the resource recovery facility. This was important because it gave us the opportunity to go back and look at, with more time, not just 90 days, other potential sites that maybe hadn't been looked at before. The original report indicated that there were over 230 some odd sites looked at, but in 90 days, it was reduced down to, as you know, essentially 2 sites, and the decision was made on one, which was Doral. So reopening that discussion, I think, was very important because it gave the mayor and her staff and the administration an opportunity, and by the way, the consultants also for the county, to look at what might be the best way to do this and where to do this. And the final thing that it did, it asked the mayor to explore alternative technologies to a waste to energy facility, and that's important because we need to have a major discussion on that issue. And a little bit later, I'll point out something that also was voted on that wasn't necessarily directed at the resource recovery facility, but it is directed at looking at what is going to be our long-term plan in this county when it comes to waste. And I know in the next slide, and I'm not going to go through all of it, but it's important for people to understand that, a year ago, actually a little bit more than a year ago, we were in a really, really bad situation in the sense that Doral was the chosen site. There was already a county RFP for a consultant to get this thing going. Now, the first thing I did when I got in was obviously talk to Mike Fernandez, the former director of the Department of Solid Waste Management. And one of the first things I did was, tell him I'm going to move to try to reconsider this. Now, Super Bowl Sunday, even though we had on the agenda the resolution to rescind the resource recovery facility, is when the fire occurred. And what's very important for everybody to understand is that there had been smaller fires before. This just happened to be the largest one and caught the most attention. But we definitely, were able to, and I want to thank the administration too, and Mayor Cava for truthfully being open to reopening this discussion. And by the way, I want to thank her because even back in July of last year, it was not her choice necessarily to not have the discussion. The original approval in July 19th of 2022, I think, caught a lot of us off guard, if not all of us. And obviously, from my perspective, I've been fighting this thing for over 20 years. It was disheartening to have it happen that way. So it's important for us to recognize that we've come a long way in a year. We're still not where we want to be, but it's important. Now, the most recent, obviously, report. Obviously, the mayor had certain recommendations. There was, our consultants went back and looked at different alternative sites. I had the opportunity to go out with the airport director earlier this year to this particular site, Opelika West, which, in my opinion, is the preferable site for many different reasons. But amongst them, it's that it's not near any residents. And I know that the mayor of Miramar came and spoke, but they are more than a mile away. And that would not be the case either in Doral or Medley. The second thing that I think is really important with the mayor's recommendation is that obviously it really opens up the discussion to alternative options and sites, which was not what was in the original report. Now, I did get a chance to work with the consultants and with the RER, which is obviously the department at Durham, essentially, for the county. So they also weighed in on this issue. For those who are not aware where this facility is at, it is a decommissioned county airport called Opelika West that is now being called, I believe, Airport West, because there's a confusion with that being with the Opelika Airport. It was an airport that was commissioned through the year 2005, but decommissioned that year. Basically, it was an airport that was used much more for touch and goes. Under the prior commissioner, there had been discussion of having some sort of drag race strip out there. The county put out a request for proposals. None of them really came through because the liability for a drag race strip, not being anything that was palatable to anybody that would put out that would respond to the RFP. Now, one thing that is important, so you understand, there are other proposals for this airport too, but there's 413 acres, and that includes potentially a storage and or inland port for our port of Miami. Presently, those of you who have followed the collection of sargasso or seaweed that was impacting Key Biscayne is being stored out there. In fact, when I went out there the first time, it was there. I was aware of it because the commissioner of the district, they gave me the courtesy of letting us know that that was something that was being recommended. So that's where I know we're going to go now through different slides, and that we can then have a discourse on some of my opinions on this and where maybe I see this going.
And Commissioner, before we start with the slides on what actually happened most recently, I wanted to take a moment to make a comment. You just you gave us a bit of a timeline in the last two slides, and we'll put that up on our website so people can access it whenever they want. But I do think it's important that you shared some of that history, because you got a lot done sort of in a very short period of time. And I think it's important for the residents to understand what happened and how, to some degree, you accomplished that. But I also think it's important because there's a lot of discussion and things that go on within your commission amongst your colleagues. And I think that a lot of times when residents go to these meetings or hear what happens, they're not always sort of fully aware of all the other stuff that's going on in the background to really sort of appreciate, hey, we're not necessarily where we're at, but we are so much further ahead than we were. And I think that laying out some of that timeline of the work you did gives a little bit of intel into what goes on in sort of securing the support on the commission that you were able to get. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah. No, I think it's a fair comment. And you reminded me of something that's important, Yvette, which is critically important. Even before July 19th of 2022, as the Mayor Doral, I had sent a letter to not only our sitting commissioner, but everybody else on the commission and the mayor, objecting to considering the Doral site as the final site without really analyzing other sites, number one. And it was something that, it was very clear to me. I truthfully, I know that this was a little bit sensitive for Covanta, but, I would have preferred that the Covanta contract, which ended up being a 5-year with a 5-year option. And that's important because everybody needs to understand that the contract really was essentially a total of 20 years, and it happened a year before we incorporated. And I objected to it then as the president of One Doral. So we've been at this for a long time. And I've told my colleagues on numerous occasions that of all Doral elected officials, the one that's lived the closest to this facility has been me. We've been at it for a long time, and all we wanted was a fair opportunity to look at all the possible sites. 40 years ago, Miami-Dade County put this site out here because there were very few people out here. There was no Doral Park. There was no Doral Isles. 95% of the growth, by the way, was either permitted or rezoned by the county before we were a city. So the county, knows, and when I say the county, I mean whoever was making the decisions back then, that, they were permitting some of this growth to occur, which was fine because these plants are not supposed to go beyond 40 years anyways. Right. So, and people knew it. It's not like I didn't know when I moved in that there was a plant there, but I also knew that there had to be things done to really improve the way this plant was functioning. And there were some changes in the late 90s, but they were not enough. The plant is too old. And if you take a look at, and I mentioned it at the last commission meeting where we discussed this, if you look at some of the pictures of this facility, and I know many of you, including myself, have had a chance to visit it, you can tell this plant was going to need, was not going to work after the 40-year period was up, which is coming up in any case. So, it's been a complicated process, but it's been a long fight. But I want to make it clear that my colleagues on the commission knew very well the minute I got on there, because they received my letter as the mayor Doral objecting to all this. They went, and you were there too, actually objecting to this, much like I was there as the mayor, and you were there on behalf of the coalition, and other residents were there last year when this got thrown upon us, so to speak. So we had no control of the vote at the time. And, it was one of the things that now, and I want to say one thing that's important, because I know there's probably mostly Doral residents here. It's not just a Doral issue. Like I said on the dais, this is about not only the people of Doral, but it's about the people of the western part of the county and everyone in Miami-Dade County. And, we're a lot better off today than we were. It was a commitment I made, not only as a Doral resident, but as someone who had been dealing with this issue for a long time, much like you have, Yvette, much like everyone else in the coalition has been dealing with for the last number of years. So it's important. I'm glad you reminded me of that.
Absolutely. And I just think that it's important to know that it's still a long road, but we really have come very far. And as we deal with some of the potential options and obstacles that we have, I think it's important for the residents not to ignore that there is politics and a lot of stuff going on, behind. And we just, we may not always get exactly what we want, right? But if we understand the process, I think we're in a better position, to achieve the overall goal. So with that, Commissioner, I'm going to put out, so there is one slide up here as to one of the resolutions that were presented. I believe it was September 19th. There was a special meeting. I hope I got the date right. There was a special meeting I attended. You were there, and the meeting had to do specifically with this particular issue. There were several resolutions that were presented by you. Most were by you. There was one that was presented by Chairman Gilbert, and I'm sure we'll address that at some point. So let's talk about one of the first ones. So obviously there was this report that the mayor had issued, or rather a memorandum that with the report, and in that memorandum, she made a number of recommendations. And so there was one resolution, which was a resolution to support the Mayor Cava's recommendation as to 1 and 2. And basically 1 and 2 had to do with creating an integrated solid waste plan, having the Opa-locka Airport West site to be the campus for this site, or for this for the new facility. And then it also requested that that the county issue solicitations, commence procurement, pursue finance alternatives, seek environmental approvals, and any other regulatory process. So this is all very wordy, but in essence, tell us about this resolution. What was the purpose of it? And we'll take it from there.
Yeah, well, obviously the resolution for me, and I think I agree with the mayor, and the mayor and I had spoken, and it wasn't just her, it was also the administration, and also our experts that recommended now that the Opa-locka Airport West site would be the best place to have a campus approach to dealing with an integrated solid waste plan. And by a campus approach, which I happen to agree with it, in my opinion, it is the right approach, because and we have to remember, and I would tell the residents to remember, that we are not just dealing with a waste to energy facility, but we would be dealing with recycling, mulch, a number of other things. And the proper way to do this, and we have the land, 400 and plus acres, right off a major thoroughfare, easy to get to, in a road that's actually being expanded by FDOT to make it even larger than it is. I agree with the campus plan. The campus plan, by the way, would not be possible in the Doral site. I want to be clear on that, because the site is not big enough, and it may not even be possible in Medley either. So the idea to have all these facilities together and potentially using that energy to not only power other things, but also power the buildings and other county buildings, I think is one of the best things that we can do. So And I'm going to say something now that everybody needs to understand how the county works. You're right, Yvette, that there's a process. I had proposed for the special meeting, as you know, I think it was 6 or 7 resolutions consistent with the mayor's report. Um, Obviously, Chairman Gilbert proposed his. As the chairman, he had the prerogative to hear his first. If his is heard first, then it was going to be very difficult to get to these resolutions. And when we talk about what happened that day, we need to understand that there's a process. I still have these resolutions to propose at the right time, and I am still hopeful, in particular, that these two resolutions will be two of the resolutions that will be approved, hopefully, when we finally take a final vote on this. And we'll talk a little bit about it later as to some of the things that were mentioned by some of my colleagues and why I don't agree with some of the things that were said and agree with some of the others. But the importance of this is that it would be a campus, and this site is the one site that would be large enough to provide us as a county that ability of the sites that we've been looking at this point.
And Commissioner, and before we start with the next one, just to be clear again, because I think we don't always get you, and you have so much experience, and you know how this works. So this on the 19th, is it a first reading and then it comes back for a second vote, or is this resolution automatically adopted? Can you?
No, there were only 2 resolutions that were adopted on the 19th because all of these were never really presented because of Chairman Gilbert's resolution. And the first one was instructing the county to move forward without ranking, which obviously the mayor's resolution, which I agreed with.
Right.
And obviously the airport west side or the Opelika west side is number 1, Medley number 2, and Doral number 3. There was a feeling by my colleagues that they did not feel, and that was part of resolution number 3, which would have ranked them and sought, beginning the process for preliminary permitting and regulatory review, et cetera. The argument that was made, obviously, was by my colleagues that they did not have enough information. We saw the mayor of Mirror Market make a presentation. We saw some other activists from other parts, none from Doral, I don't believe, even though there may have been a group that does have some members in Doral, argue that there shouldn't be a site. Well, the problem with that is that the county's plans are to have a waste to energy plant. So in a perfect world, zero waste would work, but we're very far from zero waste. And my colleagues correctly pointed out that the only place that has even discussed zero waste in the state is Gainesville, and it really hasn't progressed because for zero waste to really work, all of us have to get rid of all our garbage perfectly at this point. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't ask people to, go toward trying to get to zero waste, recycling appropriately, obviously, composting, etc. But that's not where we're at right now. So the 2 resolutions that did go through were obviously Chairman Gilbert's resolution that we'll deal with it in a second, which really deals with moving forward to having a negotiation with the city of Doral. And part of his resolution that was added was moving the report or the sites forward, but without a ranking. As you heard me say at the meeting, I believe, because air quality was something that was discussed. There was even a reference made by one of my colleagues to the Titan plant. Well, guess what? Doral and Medley are between the Titan plant and between the Medley landfill. So I would hope they do the air quality studies, because I have a pretty good feeling that the air quality studies will show that Airport West will probably be the preferable one, because there's nothing out there with the exception of rock mining, cemetery, and truck parking. So the other resolution that passed, which I think is very, very important, is, and we'll get to it in a second, is that instructing the mayor to begin closing the plant today, the resource recovery facility. As you heard that day, the county has been paying over $1 million to Covanta, and nothing much is happening on the plant because obviously the plant isn't working with the exception of shredding tires at this point, which then gets taken to a landfill. I think that's important for us, and I want the Doral residents to understand why I think it's important. Uh, and by the way, Covanta had sent a letter. They've threatened a lawsuit. It is what it is. I believe, and so does the mayor, and so do the attorneys, that we are have a right to obviously make a decision to close the plant down at this time. Because even if we were to reopen the plant partially, we really would be losing money. And it's not going to happen within the time period in any case that would be reasonable. And that the amount of trash we'd be able to actually take care of in a partially reopened plant doesn't make it economically feasible for the county. So that second vote, which was to close down or to instruct the mayor to begin the process to close down the facility, the existing facility, I think is important. And it's important for two reasons. Number one, it closes it down or begins the process of closing it down. But number two, it's my opinion, and speaking to some of the experts, that once it's closed down, it'll be considered a brand new plant. And, the standards that'll be applied have to be the same as it would be for a brand new plant anywhere else. And I think that inures to the benefit of arguing that this is not the best place to put a plant, because 40 years ago, there weren't residents around there. And, as I explained to the mayor of Miramar when we met privately, he made reference to the 1 mile from Miramar. It's 1/8 of a mile from residents in Doral. He also mentioned that, the environmental process now includes looking at equitable issues in communities. Well, Doral is also a minority community. If one would argue Miramar is, so is Doral. So I want to be clear and I want people to understand that the importance of closing, or at least instructing the mayor to close down the plant, is that if in fact Doral is considered a new site, then it has to go back to the rules as they stand today. It's not going to be let's call it a partial rebuilding of an existing plant. And I think that is very important.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that. When we did an update soon after the vote or this particular meeting, I reminded the viewers that the coalition had actually challenged Covanta's air permit back in December of 2021. And so we had some experience, sort of with the permitting process and how that often can be quite an obstacle for a facility such as this. And so I think that the way that you explained it actually hammers it home even more, the fact that they would have to treat this site sort of brand new, and whatever are the applicable regulations and standards are what they are now, not what they were 40 years ago. And therefore, it's a strong angle where the residents, if we don't necessarily get what we think is in our best interest, we'll have avenues. I mean, I'm mentioning that as a resident and as one who my firm has filed suit against the county in the past. I just mention it as something that's available to us, or that might be available to us if in fact they choose Doral as a site. And you just sort of reiterated that. And so I appreciate that very much. So there's we can move on from this slide because I think that addressed the permitting. Let's talk about this particular slide, Commissioner. This is the one that addresses Chairman Gilbert's proposal. And Commissioner, before you give your feedback, earlier I had asked you, I not asked, but I commented that I appreciated your timeline, because there is so much that goes into, these decisions. I know that there's, the sunshine laws, and as far as, you can't necessarily communicate about your vote outside of the meeting, but even though there is not that direct communication, there is still, a whole body of people that are working in the background, right? Trying to figure out where are these votes going to go? How are they going to land? If we do this, then they get that. If they get that, then we do this. And so I'm just speaking about it generally, but I'm mentioning this because me personally, when I saw this from Chairman Gilbert, it really did feel a lot like, okay, Darrell, you've been coming here, for how long? We get it, but guess what? At least from the chairman's perspective, we want something in return. And of course, I say that on my words, not even on the coalition's words. Maybe you don't agree with that. But I just think it's important that people understand there's a lot more to it than whatever just gets said on the dais. And so with that being said, please offer us some insight on this, because this one, we weren't expecting it.
Yeah, I think this emanated from the comments that were being made previously by Commissioner Regalado originally, that if the property values go up because of the site not going to Doral, not being the Doral site, that there should be some sort of special benefit or special taxing district. I'm not supportive of it. You heard me say it the other day. I'm not supportive of that aspect, just simply because I believe that this is a county-wide facility. And if that's going to be the case, then I think that we need to make sure that any other county-wide facility anywhere else in the county be treated the same way. So I believe that it would be a problem in the long run if we do it that way. Your son, who I just saw, would probably be one of the ones that be responsible for some of this.
Sorry about that.
But you have to understand that from the perspective of the chairman, and he wouldn't do this if he didn't believe, that there might have been the support. There is a discussion of, whether or not they're instructing the mayor to negotiate with the city of Doral for the equivalence of a special benefit district. Now, look, you have to define the area, the length, the reason. I know Commissioner Regalado has mentioned on many occasions, quote unquote, Old Smoky, which is an old landfill that was an old burn facility that was in the city of Miami. It's now used as a training facility for the fire department. But, essentially, this is the same thing. So my argument would be, obviously, that this land will have a lot of value. It is probable that this land, could be sold for a substantial amount of money. Could you be used to defray the creation of the new facility? One of the other things we did discuss is we did not discard what's called a PPP, public-private partnership, for the building of this facility, so it would cost the county less. That, I think, is something that has been proffered and discussed, in particular by Florida Power and Light, which obviously buys the energy to begin with. I'm not against that being discussed either. The financing is a totally separate issue. We can't even get to the financing until we get to where we're at today. As I told many of you that are residents, the first thing we had to do was work it backwards, change the decision that had been made, look at what could be the long-term site, and eventually close it short-term. So I think we've accomplished at least two of those three goals. The question now becomes the choosing of the site, and if, in fact, this proposal by Chairman Gilbert moves. I mean, it's going to be up to, I am no longer the mayor of the city of Doral, as you heard me say, but I think that they're going to have to sit down and have this discussion. Obviously, if the city of Doral, if there were to be an agreement to create some sort of special benefit district, which ironically, I'd probably be falling within that, you need to define the timeline, the area, and certainly we'd have to look at what the cost would be. The only thing that should really be discussed is anything new that is needed at the site because we're moving the facility. Because a brand new site is going to be a brand new site wherever it goes.
Wherever it's go, right?
Now, if you're telling me that you're not going to have a transfer facility and you're going to move it and the transfer facility won't be there either, then I think that may merit some discussion. because there are by the way, there are transfer facilities in other parts of Miami-Dade County. Let's be clear on that. And so the argument would have to be, we're going to have more operational expenses because this transfer facility won't be there. If you're going to say there's going to be a transfer facility in the site, then I don't think there should be any discussion. I don't support that, but it was something that was it was surprising, but it was also expected. Commissioner Regalado had, and I know she was on a show in Doral or some sort of podcast, and I don't know if she was asked that question, but she had mentioned this before. And to me, this is still going to be a countywide facility. It's going to benefit everyone in the county, not just the residents of the city of Doral. So I think that that's something that, and I know there's a question that I see that is it legal? I think Antonio asked, is it legal that is it legal that they have this sort of, I don't know the answer yet. I am interested in finding out from the county attorneys. One of the things that I think is important, because there was also a little bit of a myth that was created that we cannot use the dollars for this facility, which by the way would be in the range of 200 million or so, because it's an older facility on a new site. We absolutely can. This is why I asked the county attorney on the record. And the second myth is the fact that we would lose out on federal dollars if we don't break ground by January of 2025. Even the interim facility would probably not break ground by January 2025. The insurance company could, it doesn't mean that they will, but they could, the federal government could, and the insurance company could both extend that period. I want to point out that the federal government has not yet come up with the guidelines for what we would need to be able to get federal dollars. But I think we feel very comfortable, and we've been told by the administration and the county attorney that we should be able to qualify for federal dollars for this. So those two things have become a little bit of a discussion, especially on radio. And I want to clarify both, because we asked the county attorney on the first one, and it can be used for a new facility. It doesn't have to be used in the Doral site. And number two, we won't necessarily miss out on some of these dollars, including the 200 million, if we don't necessarily have a shovel in the ground by January 2025, because beginning what is important is that we have to begin the process. That's why we got to choose a site. So that's very, very important. And I don't want anybody to lose that importance. Now, the question that I have from there on NS, and I guess, Yvette, I'll take some of these questions and you can pipe in.
Yeah, absolutely. I have some questions as well, but let's go ahead and address what's coming from the crowd.
Yeah, is the three sites are all analyzed equally? They're supposed to be analyzed equally. Yes, correct. They should all be analyzed equally. And that
wasn't your preference, correct, Commissioner? But correct. Ultimately, that was
no. My preference. I still believe that the Airport West / Opelika West site is the best site. And I think that when things like air quality and other things are looked into, we're going to find out that the Doral site is not the best site. And maybe even the Medley site's not the best site. This one is probably the most complicated question from Sweet Jim, which is any possibility to choose another site in another district. And here's where, I've told many of you as residents that something that's important. It's very difficult to get my colleagues to agree to move it to their district at this point. Nobody wants a resource recovery facility in their district. In fact, nobody wants a landfill in their district. We have an item now that there's a possibility of a landfill down in, I forget what district, 8 or 9, I don't remember. And, there's a lot of opposition. And I know Commissioner Regalado has mentioned in the past, and I'm open to it, that we look at other alternative sites all across the county. But at this point, the political reality is that for me to get the votes to be able to move this facility away from the existing Doral site by moving it to another district is going to be very difficult. It's not probable that it'll happen. And the reason for that is that when there was a unanimous vote to move, or at least to reopen this discussion, one of the commitments I made is I will look primarily to find something in District 12 that will not be around residents, that will not impact any of the municipalities in District 12, and that'll meet all the other criteria. And I think we did that.
Commissioner, I know that I think we had another question from Claudia Hermosa Cardenas about if the new facility opens, would it include the Medley facility? Would that one be closed too?
Well, if you're talking about the Medley landfill, no, it would have no impact over the Medley landfill. That landfill's there. It's going to be there. Previously, we were able to get an agreement when we sued the operator of the landfill, which is Waste Management, or we intervened in an administrative order as the city of Doral when I was mayor. Where the growth now will occur to the east, not to the west. So that's going to be. But closing the landfill, no. Now, if you're talking about the issue of the potential Medley facility, that's actually on 106th past 90th at the edge of Medley. That area is a little bit smaller than the Doral area, and it's owned by a private owner at this time. So that would be one that would require the county to work with a private owner. I personally believe that the best site is Doral Airport West, because not the Doral site or Medley, because we met the criteria of being far away from residents, near a major thoroughfare, in my opinion, without any ecological issues. And what we don't want to do is impact residents.
So, Commissioner, let me get another question in before.
Sure. I got you, because they're coming in fast. I got you.
Yeah, they are coming in fast, which is completely expected considering the importance of this issue for our community. Commissioner, I don't know if you can answer this or how much information you can give us, but you know that this has been an issue, an important issue for me personally, as well as in my work on the coalition. And going back to Chairman Gilbert's proposition, the way that it was presented about, Doral, the city of Doral negotiating with the county for there to be some contribution, and they're specific about a tax towards the payment, towards monies to build this facility. The way it was written, it didn't seem to me that it was the approval of this and a successful negotiation is directly tied to whether the commissioners would approve this or not. It didn't seem like there was a direct correlation. It was just Chairman Gilbert proposing that Doral contributes, but it didn't seem to be written in a way that if it is not negotiated, then the site will remain in Doral. That's not how I read it, but I would love to get some.
No, you're correct. You're correct, except as I said on the dais,
right.
There is no incentive for the city of Doral or any of us in the city of Doral or any municipality for that matter, including Medley, to agree to some sort of, and I want to go back a second because the mayor of Medley had sent a letter where they would not mind if there was a resource recovery facility in Medley, which is much different from the position we took in Doral. In other words, they were fine.
Last year. That was when Pepe Diaz was our commissioner.
Right, in July of last year. No, you're right. I mean, I don't see it, there is no justification whatsoever for charging the residents of Doral if this is moved to a facility that's still close to Doral.
Of course.
But that is not going to be my determination. That'll be the determination of, because Chairman Gilbert's motion does not directs the mayor to have discussions with the city of Doral. I would not be supportive of any agreement unless, in fact, it was something that would, even if it would move the facility out to Doral Airport West. I'm not sure unless I was very clear on what that agreement was. How, there had to be a limited amount of time. It can't be in perpetuity. You heard me say it at the meeting. There's no reason to pay in perpetuity, quote unquote. This reminds me of when we fought the mitigation battle. which, by the way, to this day has saved the city $166 million. And people forget that too, that we had to sue we had to go to Tallahassee to take on the county to get rid of what was going to be a payment in perpetuity, which this year would be about $16 million. Many of you were not around Doral at the time, but it was a battle that we took on when we became a city. So you're correct, Yvette. We have to be very careful that there is no agreement if there isn't any determination that this is going to be moved far enough away from Doral residents to not have an impact. At least I wouldn't do it. I'm not the mayor. I'm not the council in the city of Doral now. It's their decision. But I certainly, as a resident, would say that makes no sense.
And Commissioner, I would also say I asked the question that I asked because I didn't see it that it was directly tied. However, I think that I've been around this issue long enough to know that while it may not be tied on paper, it may very well impact whether the other commissioners or whether the chairman and other commissioners vote to approve moving this facility elsewhere. In other words, whether or not Doral contributes in some way could impact whether these commissioners, vote yes to put it.
Well,
for example.
Yeah, I would assume that that could impact the way some commissioners vote. And I think that that's something that there's going to be a time period. If I remember correctly, I think it was 60 days for the mayor to discuss and negotiate.
It was, but I thought that it maybe wasn't passed with the 60 days. There was some discussion. The chairman said at the end something. There was discussion about, well, there's so much that is done and 60 days is not enough. There are contracts that you get 90 days or more time.
No, I think it was 60 days. What I brought up, which is very important, I want everybody to understand this. In one of our previous commission meetings, when we were discussing not the resource recovery facility, but everything that has to do with waste in this county, which we've been putting off for years, which prior commissions have kicked the can on this. I made a motion that before December 15th of this year, we have to approve a waste management plan, not only about this resource recovery facility, but we would need to figure out what's going to be our plan with these increases that we've had. As you all know, this year we had the request by one of the commissioners, and there was support for a $38 increase, originally 36 and 38, but the true amount that's needed is about 150 or so per year. And I agree with the commissioner that made the original motion, saying that that we might as well face the Pied Piper and make a decision. Well, if we're going to do that, then we need to sit down and have a real discussion on why we are short at this point. And I want to be clear that one of the reasons that we're short is because we've kind of raided a fund, so we don't have to increase the cost of trash collection for all of us. There's only a couple of options, and you heard before at the prior meeting that we were sending our recycling to Pembroke Pines, and that was about $22 million a year. The fact is that, the percentage of people actually recycling correctly in Dade County is nowhere near 50%. So, plastics, and I know it's mentioned in one of the questions, the government of China is no longer, the government of China has not taken in any more of the plastics that maybe at one point they did a number of years ago. So that creates a problem. I think we got to look at every option, and, we've got to look at the cost. If it's cheaper to do X, whether it deals with a resource recovery facility or not, the county has to consider it. In the short term, and we have agreements with what's called the Okeechobee landfill, which is not the one we're talking about here, but it's going up to Palm Beach. And we have agreements with Waste Management. We're not actually paying more at this moment than we were paying before, despite the fire occurring. What becomes an issue will be how much time do we have to meet our requirement of really getting all our waste taken care of before it impacts development in the county or the growth of the county. And that becomes the issue. Some people will tell you 2 years. Other people will tell you 15 years. So if it's 15 years, then the waste energy facility will probably be built by the time that's done. If it's 2 years, then we've got a crisis. There's many ways to deal with this issue. Some of my colleagues have correctly mentioned we can put it on rail, send it somewhere else. We can send it to Georgia. There are places in Georgia that are landfills. If you've ever been to the Okeechobee landfill, it's a big place. It's got a lot of years left. There is a waste energy facility in Palm Beach. Broward is looking to build a facility. I found it ironic, by the way, that Broward is looking to build a facility in the southwest part of the county, right against us.
Right. But Miramar is coming to our meetings.
Right. So I hope, as I told one of my commission colleagues, he represents the furthest north district to the west, that somebody show up at their meeting and say, whoa, before anybody talks about a facility in Broward. And look, by the way, I don't think we should, Broward has a similar problem to us. If in fact there can be discussion between both counties to look at how we can find a solution, I think that would be great also. I don't think we should discard any solution at this time, which is why I made the motion that we have to talk about all the holistic waste plan, not just a waste energy facility, before December 15th. So, it's a reality. We have to, the biggest problem we have is we have to do something. The longer we take to make a decision, the more pressure there will be to try to keep this facility in Doral as the acceptable facility. And second of all, even if it's new incarnation, I think, and my goal is to have my colleagues have a frank discussion on an issue, which, by the way, they're not responsible for, because most of them just got here, right, with the exception of really, truthfully, even Commissioner Higgins. She's only been there 6 years. This like transportation is a can that's been kicked down the road for a long time. This, like septic to sewer, is a can that's been kicked down a long time. We have term limits with term limits at the county. I think one of the good things that's happened is all of us have a limited amount of time to do what we can do. We probably, and one of my colleagues mentioned, yes, she's right, none of us will probably be around to cut the ribbon on a new facility. But it's our obligation to make a decision now, because it's going to impact the future residents of Miami-Dade County, our children, our grandkids, and anybody new that's moving in. And for too long, the can's been getting kicked, which is why we are in the position we are today. I don't want to disparage some of the people that were on that commission for over 20 years, but they knew this problem was coming. They knew we were having these issues. I had discussions as early as 2016 when I came back as mayor of Doral, telling the county, this is a problem. Start looking at options because we're going to run against this problem when Covanta's contract is up in 2022. So, look, all I can tell you is I think we need to look at everything, at every option. And I think that we need to, the December meeting, I think, or the meeting that has to take place before December, is as important as determination of where this facility is going.
That was going to be my next question, or I know we're starting to wrap it up because we've already taken almost an hour with you, but that was my next question. What's the next meeting? What can we expect? What is that meeting supposed to address so us as residents can prepare for it, mobilize, and do what we need to do?
Yeah, I think that the meeting that we will have will probably be a workshop. It may not be a meeting per se where we make decisions, but we'll have a workshop first to consider all the options. And this will be a holistic plan on how we're going to finance waste in the future. I mean, the reality is that we are going to be in the red. We are to a certain extent, unless we really make sure that we finance the future of dealing with waste. When I say that, I'm not talking just about this plan. I don't want to mix apples and oranges. I'm talking recycling. I'm talking composting. I'm talking about mulching, everything else. Um, and then I think that we will come back once these studies are done. There should be a public meeting where the presentations on these three facilities, are looked at as to which one, air quality studies that were requested, and other factors. And I really think the key part will be the air quality study. I would tell my fellow residents, and again, I'm very close to this facility. I've lived there. As I told one of my colleagues, heck, my children have been raised very close to this facility. So if you tell me it was a problem for the city of Miami, then, it's been a problem for many of us. And as you all know, there is, and it's a private law firm has filed a class action lawsuit against Covanta, which is still in the courts as a result of this fire. What I would say is, please continue participating. I know that one of the questions was, do we continue to send, our opinion to the other 12 commissioners? You're not going to need to convince me. I'm on your side. I'm here to fight for you. But my colleagues, it is important that you let them know that this is important to not only the city of Doral, but to the economic growth of the western part and the northwestern part of the county. So anything that you let people know is important. I do think, and we'll probably get a report back, and I don't have it in front of me, Yvette, because that was a great question. I do believe it's 60 days, maybe more, but we should get a report back from the mayor on any discussions that may take place with the city of Doral on any potential special benefits district. But I want to remind everybody that doesn't mean that that's approved. It would still require discussion at the commission, approval by the commission, legal sufficiency, a number of different things. So we have to be careful not to think that this is something that's automatically going to happen, number one. Mm-hmm. And number two, even if it were to happen, it would require a vote by the county commission. My position, I want to be very clear, is that shouldn't be considered unless, in fact, we've already made a decision to move this facility far away from any residents.
Well, and as a resident, it makes it's whenever you make big decisions, you want to be as informed as possible. And it's sort of hard to understand what we are getting, right, in return for agreeing to this without really knowing that, in fact, it's going to be away from our facility. I mean, listen, maybe it's an opportunity to negotiate it in those terms, and maybe the city of Doral and the administration has some success in that regard. I mean, I'm an attorney. I litigate, so I negotiate all the time. And so this ties into what I had asked you previously about, well, whether or not this gets approved, does that impact where this facility goes? And while it doesn't seem to be outright written on paper that that's how it is, at least me, I've been involved in this fight long enough to know that I do think it would impact it in some way. And I want residents to know that, not to automatically balk at the idea of having to do this, but rather to sit down, be informed, and figure out, really what's best for us.
The political reality is that my colleagues' votes may be impacted if, in fact, they know that some of the costs would be defrayed because of this facility being moved. Now, again, I would tell you that if it's being moved to Medley, then it doesn't really make as much of a difference. If it's being moved to Airport West, it does. But I want to reiterate something that's very important that I said before. The delay in making this decision is something that we should avoid. I commit to you as my constituents that I will continue to make sure that we have a answer one way or the other. The worst thing that happens in politics, and I don't know if this was President Reagan or somebody who said you can kill an idea by just creating a committee or sending it out to or a study. I think that if this study comes back in 4 months, as it was instructed to do, that's acceptable. If there's continuous delays on this study, then I have a problem with it, because we already have a recommendation for the administration and the consultants that there is a preferable site a number two site and a number three site. You know, if there are outside factors, much like the proposal or the resolution made by Chairman Gilbert, I'm fine with discussing that. But I'm not fine with continuing to delay this. And the reason for that is because I do believe that we have an opportunity to uh, make a decision to find an acceptable site. My colleagues asked me to find a site in District 12 that was acceptable. I think we found it. It's county-owned land. The cost is going to be much less than it would be if it isn't county-owned land. We're not doing anything with that land. That airport's not going to be reopened. There was a concern that the FAA would have an issue. FAA's already said they don't. So, we've passed a number of hurdles. The reason why I ran for county commissioner was because I've been dissatisfied, even as the founding mayor Doral, with a commission that's been talking about an east-west corridor for 20 years, and nothing's been done about it. So it's time for us to make decisions. As one of my colleagues said, maybe we're not there at the ribbon cutting. I'm fine with that. I just want to do the right thing, not only for Doral, but for Miami-Dade County. And let's be honest with our residents. And I think you froze, Yvette. At least from my side, I see you frozen.
Yes, I think Yvette is frozen.
She is. Okay.
How are you? Well, thank you very, very much for your very clear, comprehensive discussion. And certainly the one thing that comes clear, how complicated it is. And you got to work, I'm pretty sure, days and nights trying to move a muster, which is the commission and the county, to achieve what is best. And also, you have always said what is best for everybody, not only for the city of Doral.
No, thank you, Norberto. Now, I want to remind people of those two things. A year ago, actually a little bit more than a year ago, on July 19th of last year, the commission, at least 6 of those same commissioners, had made a decision along with the rest of the commission to start moving the process to build a new facility in Doral. I want to remind everybody that today, not only have we reopened that discussion, but there are new potential sites that would move it away from the city of Doral. So I know this is a subject that is complicated, but there has been a lot of progress. And I want to thank everybody for always being supportive to move on it. And I know one of the questions is, how can we help? ¿Cómo podemos ayudar? Listen, keep on letting my colleagues know that this is important not only to the city of Doral, but for Miami-Dade County. And that, anything that would be near residents, it's not good, whether it's in District 12 or any of the other 12 districts. And what I commit to you is we will fight, and I thank you all for joining me in that fight. And it's not over yet, but I want to remind you, we've made a lot of progress. As I said before, and I don't, as I said before, if there was somebody else in this seat, maybe we already were in the process of building a new site in Doral. We were able to change that. That is step number 1. We were able to consider other sites. That's step number 2. And we're not at the end of this battle, but I think we've made progress in a very short period. And I want to thank everybody for helping. Those of you that know me from my history as the mayor of Doral, it's never about I, it's about we. All of you have been able to join us in this fight. And, I'm very happy that that everybody has done their part.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back, Yvette.
Oh, thank you. That was awful. We were doing so well. We were almost done, and my internet went down. Commissioner, thank you again. The one thing that I was going to say was that one of the most valuable things that I got out of what you just shared with us is how important it is for action to be taken and for us to push for a decision to be made so that we can ensure that there is time, it sounds like, to do the things that need to be done. And so I appreciate that, because from an activist standpoint, I'm always trying to figure out what's the right messaging, what should we be focused on, and really having these sessions and these webinars with you help us formulate that. So thank you so very much. Your contribution on this issue is priceless, and I know that the community appreciates it immensely. Thank you.
Well, thank you all, and have a great evening. And we will continue to, as I always say, fight the good fight.
Thank you very much. Have a good night, everybody who joined us. We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Good
I
night.
think our commitment is the best thing we can have to support our Commissioner Bermudez with this fight. Thank you. Have a very good night.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.